Okay, we are taking a look at a new symbolic testing framework that is supposed to be an update of verification test and related functions. Is that correct?
Yeah. So basically, this is an ongoing effort of an internal group and we are trying to build over the existing design. So the main challenge here is to basically build and improve a system while maintaining backward compatibility. So this was one of the main challenges here. The problem with the existing test suite, I mean, the testing framework we have right now, it's very straightforward, meaning that it just works in most cases. But at some point, you're gonna hit a wall when basically you need to do something more complicated. The main problem boils down to test creation and execution that are together inside the function you were mentioning, verification test. And so basically we have been working on splitting those two steps. Another issue is that you most of the time you want to store arbitrary metadata while executing a test. So for example, you want to capture your system ID or your kernel ID or other things inside the test and then take decisions with that later. And then basically what we want to be able to do in more advanced scenario is that you want to do test processing and control evaluation. So you want to be able to process tests in real time as soon as they are evaluated. Because most of the time when you're testing, it can happen that, a tester is actually killing your kernel. So you need to know exactly at what point things were failing. You want to change the control flow when certain conditions are happening. You want to be able to create tests from existing tests, filtering, disabling, automatically inject code. All those rules should be able to, you should be able to decide what to do based on custom metadata that you were creating and storing. You want to be able to run tests in different order, run them in parallel, or define on, a custom basically graph of test and then decide which part needs to be executed and now. Now, obviously we are not solving all this problem, especially like this, but we are providing the building blocks in order to do them in the future. So how we're doing it? The way we're doing it is to basically we're introducing a new function that is called test create that allows you to create an inert test that you can then evaluate using another new function that is called test evaluate. Then we have meta information option that allows you to capture the environment. There is a new test evaluation function option for test report that allows you to choose how to evaluate a test if you want to evaluate it at all. And then we have handler functions and handler functions key, which is another existing system that exists in other part of the system that we are adapting here in order to basically respond and react to event in real times. So let's start with something easy, like this is, we are also building a progress reporting option that defaults to true in a notebook. And yeah, you can see the behavior. So basically now we have finally a progress report that shows how many tests have been running.
Why did this evaluate anything? There's no test evaluate here.
No, here no. Here I'm just showing the progress report. But test report will automatically create evaluate non-unevaluated test. And this is the current behavior. So when you run a test report, test suite is evaluated.
I get it. Yeah, nice.
Okay. Then we have under functions and under function key. So this is just simple test file I have. And so by default, you have an association that says an unrelated event, and then you specify a function. So what to do with it? Wait. Yeah. And so those are all the events that are printed. So you see that every time, so the report started, then a certain file was open, then section started, then a test was created, and then at the end, the test is evaluated. So as a final step. So first we collect the test, and then the test is evaluated. Now you can, with handler functions, you can say that you only want to print events. For example, when a test is evaluated, you want to print it. And with handler function keys, you can select only the keys you are interested in, so that you don't get them all. With this function, for example, you can react to any event. The function is executed during the evaluation of test reports. So, for example, you can use throw and catch in order to throw an error if the outcome of a certain test was not a success, and so you can immediately stop the test with, for example. So I was speaking about the fact that we were trying to minimize backward incompatibility. So this change is optional. This is the only backward incompatible change, but I think it's necessary, because what we have done is that when you do test create, basically it will create what we call now a test object, and previously was called test result object, with a new outcome that is called not evaluated. And so basically the test object will now have 5 different outcomes. Those are the 4 existing. This is the new one. And so basically test result object will simply evaluate to test object in this design.
It seems a little odd to me that those things not evaluated is a state of a different kind than success and failure. I don't understand why there isn't, I mean, it's not the right name, but an unevaluated test object that is created by test create.
Well, as I was saying, like that would probably have been a good solution if we were designing it from scratch, but this is a design that tries to live with the existing system.
No, I don't understand why this test create is a new function, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it can create anything it wants. So where's the plugin with the existing system? How does it plug with the existing system?
Okay, so basically basically the test object just replaces the test result object. You can feed it to test result, to test report, and test report will take care of evaluation. Otherwise, you can simply evaluate with test evaluate. So basically you do test create.
I don't understand why there's a problem here. So the existing thing, as soon as you generate verification test, it will evaluate. And that gives a test results object, which is the result of the evaluation, right? Which is then reported on by test report, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So you're saying test create creates an unevaluated, we have this term verification test, which is an evaluated test that gives a test object as its output.
Okay? Correct. So basically in this design that I have done, basically verification test is identical to this, can basically be replaced by this expression.
I get it. I understand. So I don't understand why test create can't produce something that isn't the right name, but it's basically an unevaluated test object.
Well, it's still, because then you will need to pattern match in a different way depending on whatever is which is probably not convenient. Sorry?
Pattern match for what?
So every time you need to process test, you will need to check whatever is a success or a fail or whatever, right? The thing
you're arguing that it is convenient to have a test object that can be in an unevaluated state as well as in a success state and so on. That it is convenient to have the same kind of construct representing unevaluated and evaluated tests.
The properties they're going to be common in any case, because you're going to have input in an evaluated case and you're going to have input in the other object.
You're not going to have success. You're not going to know whether the status. Okay.
Right. In that case, you are going to return. We are returning a missing.
Okay. So wait a second. So the design point here is that you think it's convenient to conflate together the unevaluated tests and the evaluated tests in a single test object. Am I correct, or are you only doing that for some kind of compatibility reason?
We are doing it for both reasons, and I also think that is convenient. Also because, like, when you have a test object, you want to run it again. So if you have a test object that was failed, In any case, you want to be able to just take that object and run test evaluate in order to see, if now it works.
Okay, so
And so
unevaluated
basically,
is just the state where, okay, so if you have a test object that's successful, can you say test evaluate again on the successful test object?
yes. So test evaluate will always run a test object. That's the design. Basically,
okay, so what's the incompatible change?
There is no incompatible change other than the fact that this guy was called test result object. So basically,
so verification test previously gave a test result object, and you're
yes.
proposing that it now gives a test object.
Yes.
But both test result object and test object can be fed to test report as elements to produce a report.
Yeah, exactly. Because we think that in the end, test result object would be confusing for the non-evaluated case.
Yeah, I get it. I got it. This makes sense. Keep going.
Okay. So what we were saying, okay, yeah, under functions we've done, test object, test create. Yeah, so, okay, so this was the change with test object.
Yep. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, so test evaluate will always evaluate as we were saying. So for example, if I do this test, which is basically doing a random integer, as you can see, basically it will keep evaluating it over and over again. It starts with in the not evaluated case, then we apply test evaluate, then we reapply it again, and then we reapply it again. And so every time it's evaluated again. It's going to be listable. In this design, we can simply deprecate verification test. Or we can keep it as a syntax sugar for this. Yeah, then let's go to test report. So basically the way test report works is that test report evaluates the first argument. It will collect all events happened during the evaluation. So everything every test that is created during the first argument evaluation will be collected. Then it will collect the result. And then basically, it will have created at some point a big bag of tests. What it will do is that it will take all the tests with not evaluated status, because for whatever reason.
So wait a second. What's the difference between test create and just test object?
The test object you can create it by basically a test object is just an association. Test create is just syntax sugar to produce the right test object, so you don't do basically mistake.
But one important difference also is that test create essentially sews the test object. So if you have a sequence of test creates in a file, you don't have to somehow figure out how to return them.
Okay, I don't understand that statement.
So suppose you have a file full of tests, right, one after the other, and you want to collect them without evaluating them. Right now, verification test and they're not returned from the file; they're sewed, like the system function sew.
That's really weird.
Yeah, but this is the
like that.
Yeah, this is the existing design. So basically, what happens is that during the evaluation of this argument and everywhere when we get the files, there are events. So
this is a weird object. This is a weird thing you're saying. You're saying the sew doesn't happen unless the test create. I mean, just wrap a reap around that test create.
Oh no, but this is not actually. I mean, I cannot. But I can sew that. I mean, obviously, it doesn't interfere with reap and sew.
What is the sew? There's no auto sewing.
No. Obviously, it's test report that is internally using a mechanism similar to reap and sew, but it's not related to reap and sew.
Okay, hold on. What exactly is it doing? I mean, you're saying
everything is event based. So what it's doing is very simple. Remember these handler functions. So every time there is test create evaluates, it emits an event. Test report simply collects event, and it creates a report out of those events. That's
okay. Hold on. I'm trying to understand this. Okay, so you've got this whole piece of code, and it's got all kinds of deeply nested things. And you're saying that, I mean, explain to me how this relates to like things like confirm and close, which also are sort of action at distance functions. Is this the same thing? If I run a test evaluate, if I say, let me just understand, if I say test report of F of test evaluate of test create, what happens? Could you try that, please?
Sorry, what is it? So test report of?
Yeah, make that bigger. Could you make that notebook bigger?
Test report of?
Yeah, of F of, no, open bracket, please, let's do it that way. Open bracket, F of test create of it, some random test. Okay, show me what happens here.
So yeah, I mean, so what happens is that it will, as I was saying, so first of all, this guy evaluates. So it will collect the event and you will have inside the test report this event. Now we are encountering here an invalid expression that is F of test object, whatever, and test report is complaining.
I don't understand. Why are there two paths here? Why isn't test report just collecting the evaluated output of the test evaluate of test create?
This is not something that, I mean, this is part of the legacy behavior.
Part of the what?
The legacy behavior, what test report is already doing in the system. This is not something new, but I can explain to you. So basically, what is happening is that every time test create evaluates, so every time there is a verification test, because it was verification test, every time verification test evaluates, it emits an event. And the event is basically, yeah, rip and so. So basically every time
I got it. I understand implementationally what's happening. Okay, I get it.
Okay.
Okay. The problem is that what does it return from the evaluation? You're saying that so I don't understand this. Did this or did this not generate a valid test report object?
This is returning a valid test report object, and this test is going to be inside your test report.
Okay, fine.
There is also one failure that is happening because after the evaluation of this result, basically test report will, so if you will parse the result of the expression, and the result of this expression.
Why is it doing it twice? Why is it picking it up both from the so and from the evaluated form?
Because if you can feed to test report a list of already evaluated tests and simply do the report. So
no,
if
this is not cutting it for me. No.
So if you have
one
this,
point is that you're trying to get in real time. You're trying to get a test report to build things up in real time. That's why you're using so. But then you also are trying to get an output of value that happens not in real time. Is that correct?
Yes, but this is not part of the, but this is already the legacy behavior. So what I'm saying is that you can do this, and this is basically, functionality of test report.
Can somebody understand? Todd, do you understand what's going on here? Or Connor, do you understand this?
Well, I think would probably.
Go ahead.
I think it probably. Yeah, I mean, I think it would help to understand the motivation for why this so behavior exists at all. And my understanding, and what is borne out in how we use this internally, our testing frameworks, is you have a file that's full of tests, right?
Yep.
And if you want to simply, write out a sequence of tests one after the other, it's extremely poor user experience if you have to essentially manually collect the results of each of those tests and then make sure the last statement in your file is returning that. So that's the UX motivation for why that so behavior exists.
Bullshit, if I might say so. I'm sorry. This is just a hack. Come on, guys. That's not the right way to solve that problem. If you've got a file of tests, and you want to, look. Okay, what you're saying is notebook evaluate on that file of tests. Notebook evaluate has the behavior that it is producing the last result in the notebook. Okay, that might not be the right behavior, and in this case, it's not the right behavior. Instead, you want to pick up every single output. It's like a notebook import. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Right? You really want notebook import, not notebook evaluate. But the solution to that is not to have some crazy action at a distance so reap thing, which doesn't make any sense in the, okay, does it make any sense except for that case? Because I think that case you're solving in the wrong way. So is there any other case where it makes sense? Is there some real-time behavior where it makes sense?
Well, I think the emission of events certainly makes sense. I mean, for things like progress reporting and you know, printing out test results.
Sure,
as
generating
they come
events is a different thing.
Yeah.
But the so reap behavior is not the same thing. The events are fine and dandy.
Yeah, but basically what we have done is to, I mean, this is, again, Steven, this is the legacy behavior. We have a lot of systems that rely on this behavior. So
okay, I'm not buying it. I'm sorry. I think it's wrong. So let's
I also think
it's wrong. Okay,
I also think it's not
wrong.
perfect, but
here's how we do the design. Okay, let's figure out what we want. Let's figure out how we want it to work. Then let's take the legacy behavior and let's make a bridge. But first, let's figure out what we want and not pull back from what we want, saying, oh my God, it might be not compatible legacy-wise. Okay, let's figure out what we want first. Then we'll talk about how we make a bridge to the legacy behavior.
Okay, but I think that it wouldn't affect the design that we have, because
no, I don't
even if we if we remove this evaluation behavior where we're basically collecting also the tests that are deep down inside some evaluation,
let me just understand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the so behavior is used only so that you can take a notebook full of tests. Is that correct? And what do you do with that notebook?
Well,
go ahead.
It's not a notebook though, right, Steven? Let's not use that word, right? Because we're not talking about, we're talking about a file.
Okay, so what do you do with that file? How do you activate that file? How do you say run the tests in this file?
So you basically do test report of that file.
Okay, fine. So test report of a file, you're saying that that test report of a file, because of some implementation detail, was, God, this is crazy. It's crazy. I'm sorry, it's just crazy. You're saying that it was doing, you thought that that had to use get, which means that it could only read the last thing in the file. But there's no reason why test report of a file shouldn't work like import of a file, where it can do whatever it wants with the file. It doesn't have to just read through the file and pick up the last element in the file. Am I making sense?
Right. You could get every independent input line, essentially.
Yeah, it's perfectly valid for test report of a file to just say, I'm going to go through this file, I'm going to pick up every test, and I'm going to run it. Does that make sense, Ricardo? I mean, am I missing something here?
But there's other
so
things.
This is the existing,
but there can be other
typical
things
test
in a
suite that
file
we have
that are not tests, though, right? Is
and if you just get this file, you're going to get.
I know, but we don't want to just get that file. We don't want to do that. We want to say how we want a function that, no, just getting the file won't work, right? It's not what we want. When you say run tests, that you're trying to have a hacker, hacker-lola, where you say just running get will run the tests. That's not correct. See what I'm saying? The action of running tests is a different thing from just running get. That's why you've gone to all the trouble to separate out test create from test evaluate. The previous version said naming a test runs the test. You've pointed out that that's wrong. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
And so it's wrong in this case as well. You don't want the pure get to run the tests. You want some wrapper to run the tests.
Wait, no. The pure get will not run the test, because this guy will basically just create the test.
Okay, fine.
And it will just emit the event that a test was created. Then test report that is listening to this event will collect them and run them at the end.
Okay, but so then the correct thing is that you're given a file, and the file is fed to test report, and test report picks up the tests in the file. It goes through the file just like import. It goes through the file. It looks for the tests in the file, picks them up. It runs them or collects whatever is coming from them, and then everything is happy. There's no issue. There's no hack about, oh
Wait,
my gosh, we're
wait,
using
wait,
get and
but-
it's only the last line.
But it's basically the same implementation. So you are saying that we should, instead of relying on evaluation, we should parse this file?
Well, no,
Yeah.
you still, I think, I mean, you could imagine the way you'd approach this, because you know, there are probably other types of files than testing files where it'd be useful to get all of the non-last results as well,
agree.
right? So you could imagine we could have a system function placeholder name, you know, get all, or, you know, an option to get that's like include non-last results. Obviously terrible names, but that's the idea. That
Yeah, it could be
just
get
reads
list, for example. It could
get
be called
list,
get
yeah.
list.
Yeah. And that would be the building block on which you build. I mean, you essentially just do get list of file.mt, and then you do cases of that to look for test objects and maybe, you know, lists of test objects.
But that just won't work for more complex cases, because I want to be able to generate a test, you know, based on an algorithm. I want to do while true and do test create. That's basically the what
Okay,
people need.
you're not
to
going
do.
to be able to use get for these files off the table, right? So you're going to have a wrapper that takes the file that contains tests and runs those tests. Am I making sense?
Right. Well, that wrapper is test report. It's just a question of
Fine.
what does it look like at the intermediate steps.
Well, there's no, I mean, how it's implemented is irrelevant. All I'm saying is, okay, are you explaining the so reap thing to me just as a piece of implementation, or does it have a user consequence?
No, I mean, I mean, the user consequence is that basically every time you evaluate test create during this block, we are collecting this test automatically.
I don't understand. I don't understand. Inside test report, just like enclose, for example, looks for every confirm inside that enclose. And
it doesn't look for them.
no, I mean, the confirm, I mean, confirm just does something and it throws to the outer enclose. And you're saying you're doing a similar thing here with test report. Is that correct?
Yeah.
There's no problem with that. There's no consequence. I mean, there's no user consequence. Nothing the user will ever see. I mean, it's just that. Am I wrong here? I mean, it just
yeah, no,
is,
I don't think that is. I mean, again, if we were designing this from scratch, maybe we would have got a different decision. But I don't think that is.
I don't understand. I don't understand. This is purely implementation, right? Nothing about.
You can consider this to be just implementation.
There's no. Okay, let me just see. Make sure that I understand. So in that first case there. No. Of your test report, TR equals test report. There, this one here. Okay. So that's running those tests with that test evaluation function. Okay. And what does it produce as output? Can I see the output?
Yeah. So the output is going to be a test report object with
Great. That's exactly what I would have expected. No problem.
Yes. Now, if you do test result here, you will see that basically one of them was executed and the other one was not, because the evaluation function is basically designing whatever it should evaluate.
I get it. There's no problem with this.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
why is it called MT? What is MT?
Where again MT?
.mt file. I think that was a Mathematica test file. It should be .wt presumably.
Yeah,
we have both. We support WLT.
Both. It's just
okay.
Yeah,
all right.
just used to it.
Okay, so hold on. So test report there is given a list of strings which are file names. Is that correct?
So in this case, yes. So this evaluates to a bunch of test file that I got here.
Test report presumably eats the following objects. It eats test objects, it eats strings, it eats file wrappers, it eats cloud objects, etc. Is that correct?
Cloud object, we can support them, yes.
Yeah, we need to be able to do that. So anything that can store an expression, it will support.
Yeah.
Okay. So now what it does, it takes that file with its, yeah, I mean, see, a cloud object is already a tricky case because what's in that file? That file could either be a single expression with a list of test objects, or it could be a file where there is a test object on separate lines. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, as long as we will basically be doing cloud get, I guess, during the evaluation of cloud get.
I want to make sure that the thing I just said is correct. In that file, there are two choices.
Yes.
Choice number one, it's a
like
single
a regular
expression.
File.
What's that?
Yes, like a regular file.
Yeah, it's a single expression that is a list of test objects. That is one possibility. True or not true?
True.
Okay. Case number two is you want the special case if there are multiple expressions in that file, that get list, the function we should have had 35 years ago but didn't. Okay. Get list. If get list returned more than one element, okay, get list will be a little bit like read list. Okay. It's if it returns more than one element, that means there's more than one separate expression in that file. So one is saying you could either put those test objects in a list, or you could put them in on separate lines so that get list would return them as different list elements. Is that correct?
Yes, in the current implementation, basically this works, but also in the legacy implementation, it will work.
Okay, fine. So then, okay, I understand. So great, that's fine. So then typically in a cloud object, you would just have a list of test expressions, test objects, just because it doesn't really deal with the multi-line story. I mean, again, I'm a little bit confused by if you have a notebook and you do a notebook import, whether you can have a notebook of test objects.
So as long as you do your thing and then feed test object inside test report, is gonna work. That's the bottom line.
No.
And for a cloud object,
I'm asking a different question. I'm saying, let's imagine that you had a notebook containing test objects. Okay, a notebook, right? It has all kinds of section headers and text and all kinds of other stuff. And there is a particular cell type, for example, that contains test objects. Presumably that's another case we should support.
I mean, the test report is supposed to work with with programmatic testing notebooks. And yes, it does work.
But Stephen means something else, though. That's not the same thing as because in a programmatic test notebook, test object, test create doesn't show up. You just have inputs and outputs in special cell types. But Stephen, you're talking about literally just a notebook that had like test create.
Well, I'm not sure it's a good idea. Maybe I am talking about that special notebook, testing notebook. Maybe that's the right answer for this.
Right. So the question is, does test report consume testing notebooks?
Better.
And right. And the old test report did. I assumed.
And I assume this one does too, right, Ricardo?
Yeah. No, that yes. As I was saying, we are not introducing that kind of backward compatibility change. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I mean, I'm good with what you're showing here. I didn't understand the whole discussion about. I mean, the whole discussion about sewing, I just didn't understand. It doesn't seem relevant to me. It seems like there's a specific thing which is an implementation detail about what happens with a multi-line file, which has to be handled correctly. But that's about it.
Yes, and basically the sew mechanism is we are kind of exposing it with this handler function mechanism that allows you to react to every event. And so every time you see something, you can decide whatever you want to.
Okay. Yeah. I think this is an implementation detail. I just don't think it's a user level thing.
Sure.
I think
we're not exposing
the handler function is going to be a user level thing because with that you can build custom mechanism. Yeah.
The only point is that in the evaluation of test report, there is a subsidiary call for the handler functions. That's what you're basically saying.
Right.
That's absolutely fine. That sounds good to me. In other words, the test report tickles the test objects inside and they start splitting out handler calls. And that's fine. I mean, is that a correct description? I mean, rather.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, those are all the notebooks that are affected.
Well, are you going to show me
started.
something? Okay.
You want to do that, or I can start? I mean, whatever you.
Oh,
you
okay.
decide.
Okay. Hold on. Okay. Where's the guide page? New guide page.
We haven't touched the guide page yet, but this is something we need to address.
All right. This looks good to me. I mean, am I missing something? Is there some giant thing that you're not telling me about? Well,
No.
Don't ask about it.
No. So I mean,
No.
the problem, Stephen, is that this is again, this is like yeah, might look kind of low level, but this is something that we need in order to build more.
guys,
and
this looks
stuff.
nice to me.
Okay.
Okay. I don't have any problem with this. It looks good. It looks well designed. It looks good.
Okay.
Can we look at the list of names of handler functions and things? Probably in your documentation there.
Yes, I mean, under functions also we haven't touched that part of the documentation, and also the complete needs to be done. But what do you want to know? Like
I'm asking what possible names of events are there?
Okay.
Names of events, names of handler functions.
Should be everything that you see here, and yes, they need to be documented. That's true. Because now
there's one new wrinkle, right? This unhandled event thing that is not supported by other handler functions.
I love
no, wait, no. This is how it currently works. Unhandled event is the way to go.
But unhandled event is not in the other places in the system where we have handler functions, right? They don't support this unhandled event.
They do support unhandled event.
What's it called?
Unhandled event.
It's unhandled event.
Really?
I thought there was
like
something.
URL read.
Yeah.
If it has an event,
it's URL submit, and yeah, if we go to handler functions, and yeah, there is, yeah. So under details, here you go.
Okay, so but isn't there is something that we're doing that's a little new? And
so what I'm doing that I'm not telling you.
Okay.
I had to bring it up.
It's just that this is a convenience.
Like
this is a convenience for an unhandled event, and this was a tentative. But actually, we were telling you in another place.
I remember this came up somewhere else. Yes.
Yeah. And that if basically this is a good idea, we can port it to other places. But obviously, all the documentation and everything for now will be only mentioning an unhandled event, etc.
I would have thought that handler functions arrow print would not mean the unhandled event. It would mean every frigging event gets a print. Because after all, nothing else is being handled, right?
Well, right, that's what it is, right? This means print every event. That's the same thing as saying unhandled event arrow print, as long as you didn't have any other handler functions.
Right, I understand, but it's more like all arrow print type thing. I do think this seems reasonable, so long as the definition of it is, this simply is equivalent to blank arrow print. Am I making sense? It is equivalent to blank arrow print, isn't it?
Well, but it's not equivalent to blank arrow print if you have other handler functions, though, right?
But there are no other handler functions. You're saying what all the handler functions are, and it's just print.
So basically, if you do, this is true, like if you do, so an unhandled event print, and then you can do test created.
Yeah, but but then you're not doing the simple syntax case.
But you couldn't say underscore arrow print in this association.
No, you couldn't. No, you couldn't.
That's all I meant.
But I'm saying that you could have an association which is just underscore arrow print with no test created there.
Right, and that would be the same as
that would be the same as just having handler functions arrow print, and that seems just fine to me.
Right, so that's another. I don't think that underscore arrow print,
works. That's okay. Supported. It's okay. I'm just saying conceptually that's what it is, and that's And then I'm fine with saying handler functions arrow print means every event gets a, you know, it's just operated with, you know, has the print as its handler function.
Okay.
Right. Anything else?
Yep.
Yeah. I actually, I'm sorry. Could you go back to those event names?
So again, we don't have a list in the documentation. I'm not sure where we should put it, because
in the documentation.
yes, but in the documentation for handler function is a generic thing for
right. So you should put it in the thing for test report, I assume.
In the details section.
Yeah, and also
Okay.
in what you can do if you think you're going to have a whole bunch of these. And do you think that they have non-trivial documentation per event or not? Or is it just once you know the name of the event, you pretty much know what it does? Or are you going to have to give more detail for each event?
No, for now it's pretty straightforward. Like,
but section completed, it's going to have a section name, right?
yeah, but section is not really something that we are exposing. So this is something internal. Like sections, we don't have them yet.
Okay, so let me make a point that we have this notion of subsidiary documentation pages, just like the import stuff has, you know, each import format has its own subsidiary documentation page, right? So if these events are going to puff out to being important, then they should have their own separate documentation pages per event. Otherwise, put them, I would say have them both on the test object page and on the test report page. And we have a good mechanism now for grandfathering, you know, documentation from one page to another for these kinds of things.
Okay. Yeah, we need to do this table with yeah.
Okay, but I think there's questions about the names of some of those event types.
Okay, I mean section started is not user exposed. So we have report started for now, file started, test created, file completed, test evaluated, and
test
report
created
finished.
mean? What does test created mean?
So this is the moment where you see what's happening. Here you get a test object that is not evaluated, and here you get a test object that was evaluated. So this is before evaluation and after evaluation.
Okay, but if I already had a test object, there will be no test created event.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Why is it file completed but report finished?
So,
why is one completed and one finished?
Okay.
One could be begun and one could be started, but that would be even more confusing.
Okay.
Yeah,
I would say they should both be completed. And we should look at other events.
This is another. Yeah, this is. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Okay, we can look at other events and check for other things. Whether I don't know whether other events have a started completed type for other events of other handler functions for completely different things like URL submit. Have that kind of
submit. Yeah.
Well, I got to look for URL submit here.
Task finished. So should be finished.
So
Everything should be finished probably.
I mean, we just need it consistent. That's all. Yeah. Whatever the created, started or finished.
Yes. Okay.
It's kind of annoying that you have to look here in these examples to see what the event names are. There should be a nice table of event names somewhere.
Yeah, that I'm not sure. This is why I was asking. I'm not sure how to do it because handler function is generic now for multiple function. I mean, at this point in time, it's only URL submit more or less. But
what
now,
I would do is this.
Yeah.
What I would do is this. On the handler functions page, write, handler functions are used in blah 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 blah. If there's like half a dozen functions, you can just list them. Okay. Then on those individual function pages, list the events that function can have a handler for. Do you see what I'm saying? Go to the URL submit page. Okay. Now that presumably has a list of events. Scroll down into the details. There we go.
Mm,
Following events can be generated. Okay,
right.
great.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we need to
That's
do
fine.
that. Mm-hmm.
And possible keys specified by handler function keys include blah, blah, blah. I mean, it seems like the right pattern.
Right. So this is not done in the current version of documentation.
Okay,
I will
fine.
say.
But we need to
yeah.
do this. So that
Mhm.
seems just fine to me.
Yeah.
Okay. What else?
Not much.
Looks nice to me. I mean,
We can take a look at individual documentation pages. Otherwise, it's yeah.
I think Todd in particular will be well equipped to be the editor for those documentation pages, and I'm happy to take a look at them, but I think you guys can do this.
Okay.
Great. In fact, we've done some of the editing. I don't claim to have done it all, but we've done some editing passes already. I think there's really just some examples to add, and this handler function keys stuff to be put in. But
Yeah, and I
we've
think you
gone
need
through
some
all of these
workflows as
for
well.
wording.
You need some workflows. Are there workflows about testing right now?
So there is a guide, I think,
No,
that we
that's
need
different from a
to
workflow.
revisit,
different
and
from a
workflow. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a workflow. for
Todd,
this.
you understand what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, we understand. Joe. I'm not sure the answer to your question whether what there is now of workflows for testing or not.
Yeah, well, there
Yeah,
probably
look-
isn't.
look
one,
on
but there
workflows.
probably should. Well, let's look. Workflow. Let's go to.
Okay, there is one.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. This one is entirely about the notebook version.
No,
of
this
stuff.
is programmatically.
Well, no, it's not entirely. We'll update this to be
Yeah,
modern
right,
stuff.
right. That's what I'm saying. You need to update that. You probably need to break it into multiple workflows.
Yeah,
You
it
could say
probably
run
needs
tests from a file, run
more
tests from a
details.
notebook.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Mhm.
All right, so we'll definitely update. The
Okay, I got
workflows.
one more thing that you might want to be able to do.
Mhm.
You might want a WFR function at least that converts between a plain text file of tests and one of these notebook tests, testing notebooks.
So the notebook, when you click on more here, can create the file.
What about a file creating the notebook?
Yeah, we don't have the other one, and
That should be
maybe-
rather straightforward to do.
I think there is Wolfram function repository is doing something like that.
Okay, fine. I mean, if it has that, I just think that's a convenience function that'd be nice to have.
Yeah,
Right.
it'd be nice to be able to go back and forth. I would go
Yeah.
with that.
This is good. Now, in terms of the use of this,
I mean, one thing that you could do also in the testing notebook, I guess you can say, well, there could be like some kind of UI where basically you have a test report in your testing notebook, and you just convert it to those kind of cells.
yes, I don't. Yes, but I mean, let's
sure
get
how.
practical for 1 second. I mean, so
Yeah.
A good case is WFRs. The people who submit WFRs should generate tests for them. Has that been happening now?
So I'm not super sure, but I think that inside the submission notebook there is a testing section.
Right, but the question is, what should we tell people to populate it with? Okay, let me give you some examples. Things like that, things like the posts that I write have tons of code in them, which should be turned into tests. And I don't know, maybe Stefan can speak to whether Stefan have to leave here. Whether that's happening right now, how that's happening right now, and what that looks like. Because do you get what I'm saying? Maybe.
Yeah,
Kurt-
I don't think we know
For what it's
anything
worth,
about
another-
that here.
Well, another place that comes up is it'd be nice if examples of documentation were also able to be treated as tests, flagged as
Yes.
tests rather.
Right,
It would
but I
also
think,
be nice if online we could say, what is the current test path for that function.
sorry,
So
what
that-
is the current what?
What I'm saying is that if you have a function that, we can say that on version 13, the test pass was 100%, but then on the new version is 95%.
Well, that's for QA. I mean, you're talking about for QA, or you're talking about for user level functions.
For user, for for user submitted function. Yeah, this is not something that we're gonna
right. I
they're
agree. That would
providing
be
the
very
function.
nice.
Yeah.
Right. That would be very nice. It would also be nice for APIs to be able to do that test.
And we have mapped out a testing framework for Packlets too, and encourage people to.
Okay, let's talk about what Ricardo just raised though, because let's talk about how we'd like that to work. Let's imagine that let's assume you're using WFR framework, okay? But you might have a private WFR. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
And you've got tests for it. And you want to be able to press a button that just says, because you might have made a change to some other function. You might want to say, do all my functions still work? You know, standard continuous integration type stuff. So what's the best way to do that? Presumably, you will have pushed to the cloud your WFR, your private WFR functions. Am I making sense? Right?
Yeah.
And you would also have pushed to the cloud your testing notebooks. So one of the things that's then important, because you have them in the cloud, it's a persistent storage location, to be able to then just say, for example, to be able to associate, maybe in the documentation for your WFR function, you could have something that will, I think you're going to have to do something. You could do it as okay, let's talk about two ways to do it. You could do it as a scheduled task. You could just every day you could run the testing notebooks, and you could spray from the results of that into the documentation, and you could send yourself mail, all the things that tasks can do. You could send yourself mail every day saying tests are still passing, or you could spray that result into the documentation for those functions. Does that make sense?
I think GitHub got some badges where basically you can embed on a website that says, what is the current test pass, and so you need to have a URL that is just an image with the test pass, and you can embed it into. Yeah.
Well, okay, you're saying something slightly different. So you're saying that given that you have a collection of tests stored in a cloud object, okay, you would like there to be an associated result cloud object. Am I making sense? That's what you're basically saying. Given a collection of tests in a cloud object, you want it to be the case that a scheduled task is going to come through, for example, and generate a corresponding result cloud object. Am I correct? And that result cloud object can then be embedded wherever you want. Am I correct?
Right.
Okay, so the issue is, if test report takes a cloud object as input, the issue is it is not in test report will take a cloud object as input and put in your current notebook the output from that. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, so you're saying there's an additional step, which is to say essentially cloud export of or cloud save of the results from test report of cloud object. Am I making sense?
Yeah, right. I mean,
so
the test report is going to be an immutable expression with all the stuff in it. So.
Right. So one additional piece there is, if we had testing notebooks in the cloud, that there be a button on that testing notebook in the cloud that says, run this and put the result in a known cloud object. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Or for all what people care, what I was saying is that from that notebook, you simply have a piece of embedded code that you can put anywhere with the result of that notebook.
I know, but you're going to have a way to do that.
Yeah,
so
yeah, no, internally,
is
probably,
to have a cloud object, right?
Yeah.
But the question is, what is the name of the cloud object? So given that you have a cloud object that represents a collection of tests, is there some standardized name for the cloud object that represents having the run version of those tests? See what I'm saying?
Right. We would need something like that to.
Right. So that's the thing to think through, is what that workflow is. I mean, my proposed workflow would be this. given the tests, that what you do is this. The WFR, when you submit it, can point to a test file. Okay? Typically, if you have multiple WFRs, they point to the same test file. Okay? Having pointed to the test file, that WFR can then display in its shingle page the results of those tests. Right? If there's nothing in that test file, just says there were 0 tests and 0, whatever happened. Right? As soon as there's something in that test file, then every so often it will come through and it will get the results. It will put the results from that test file into a cloud object that is essentially daisy chained from that test file. It daisy chains and says, I'm putting my results in this cloud object. Okay. So in other words, the WFR file points to the test cloud object. The test cloud object points to the test result cloud object. Does that make sense?
I wonder.
I was just going to say, I think that this is something to bring up in the resource system meetings, right? Because this is, infrastructure that the resource system would be needing to support.
Somewhat. Connor, do you have a last comment here?
Well, just on that topic, I was going to say, I would have expected that if that's a file that's linked to it from the WFR, it shouldn't be customizable, by the WFR author. That should just be some standard location on the WFR itself. But yeah, I agree with Todd. This is a topic for deeper discussion.
I agree with that statement too.
Right.
All right.
But we should also think about this for Packlets, because that's an idea. Yes. to have, be nice to have a little badge on the Packlet shingle page, a little green banner that says,
Yeah, no, I agree.
all tests.
Oh, definitely.
Yes,
yeah.
We should do it. Okay. This is good work.
I did want to.
Yes. Last thing.
I had, while we're on the topic of notebooks and testing, there was an idea we discussed about whether a test report could have a button inline in its box, its pretty box form that's like, open this as a notebook. So you could have a really easy way if you've got a thing in a notebook.
Why not have one of those buttons? We've got an icon for it. The thing with a square with an arrow up that means sort of open this as a separate thing.
Yeah. Something like that.
Where is this happening? Like, do you remember?
In the output box. Oh, where do we use that? It's used in a lot of palette type things. It's used in the raft. Anybody in design, Billy or somebody would know what this icon is.
Okay.
It's a square with an arrow. Okay.
Do you happen to know, are there any forms in the language that have that in their makeboxes format? Because that would be a new thing.
Yeah, this is what I was asking.
Yeah, I bet there are. I don't know it offhand. Okay.
Okay.
There certainly are in the rafts that come up underneath things. Like if you do a resource function, you just type resource function. Just type it in a notebook. Resource function of, I don't know. Yeah, there we see. That's the thing. That's the puppy.
Cool.
Okay. It means open it. You get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. We had one last thing that was being said. You were raising something else.
I know that was it. Just
okay.
Should we have a button in the test report object?
Yeah, I mean, by the way, the things I've been yakking about scheduled tasks require thought. Okay, I just put that on the list. I don't know who's project managing here. Who's project managing here?
I am, Aubrey.
Okay. Sorry, all I see is a dog. I forget. Okay. Okay. Let me also point out for ILD, can we discuss the get list function? Put that on the agenda, please. And I need to run. But this is good. This is very nice. This was a simple design review. Basically no changes. We're all good. Anything I missed here? Anything I didn't ask? Anything? The thing I didn't tell you is ...
We already did that. We're good.
I think that's a good prompt for an LLM. That's a good LLM prompt. The things that this LLM is not telling you are. See what it says.
Don't people already do that to extract like the hidden preamble?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, but people are being very creative. They're like telling the LLM to tell a story in which some character is going to explain what the LLM would have done if it had done this and that and the other. to avoid the things that have been done to protect against disgorging prompts and so on. Anyway.
Steven, you were speaking with a bot the whole time and you didn't realize.
All right. See you guys later.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.